So today I'd like to tackle what in my opinion is one of the least desirable traits of the PS90, and that is the height over bore. Now I talked a fair amount about optic height in my video on the MRO, so I'm not going to go into great detail here. But the original ring sight, as well as this setup, puts the center of the optic about 2.2 inches above the top of the stock. Now that's a very common and comfortable height and makes for a nice cheek weld, but that still puts the height over bore, that is the distance between the center of the bore and the center of the optic, at nearly 3.7 inches. Now this is really quite high, particularly when you compare it to an AR at 2.5 inches or many precision and hunting rifles as low as 1.5 inches. Now this does create some problems. First of all, there's a bigger deviation in point of aim, point of impact at any range other than that at which you zeroed. And secondly, it can create problems when shooting around a barricade, where your optic is clear of the barricade, but your muzzle is not. Of course, these are both training issues, but it makes it harder than it has to be. Another related problem I've discussed before is the distance between your hands and the rails. It's really a long way up there, making it impractical to activate lights or lasers. So today I'd like to discuss a product that addresses both of these issues, at least where lights and lasers are concerned. So this solution came from Design Machine, which is the same company that made the mount I used for my MRO. Now in the interest of full disclosure, Design Machine did send me this mount to evaluate. Now like the mount I purchased, this piece appears to be well made and very well thought out, with a lot of little extras like these lightning cuts in each side and these little ledges right here milled into the piece to help prevent the rails from moving. Now the PS90 receiver comes with two threaded holes that act as mounting points for the factory ring sight or the USG rail that comes with the current standard model. We're going to use one of those threaded holes, this one up here, for this mount. First thing we have to do is just loosen this screw for the clamp. That slides back and forth to hold this in place once it's mounted. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do with this loose, little clamp loose, is just set this in here. So this is going to go right in between the bridge, and then I need this little clamp to be inside this pocket. I'm going to hold that there and turn it around and just install this screw. Alright, now with that still loose, I'm going to push this all the way down against the receiver bridge. So this is laying right against this surface, and you can see that's machined to match the contour. So with that pushed down, I'm just going to tighten this up, hand tight. I'm going to flip it over, push this clamp against the side of the pocket this way so it's tight, and tighten that down. Okay, so now we have a little bit of rail space directly over the bore on each side. Now, a couple of possible snags, at least with my SBR, is that we have the muzzle blast from the flash hider coming straight up into this rail and whatever accessories we put on it, and we'll have to just see what, if any, negative effect that has. Now to illustrate the height over bore issue, I grabbed an inexpensive sighting laser and a bore sighting laser and my slave labor assistant, and went out at night to test various setups. Now, due to time constraints, we didn't get a precise zero for each setup, and as such, the results you see on the target board won't be precise, but they'll be well close enough to illustrate the point. So here's the setup. We removed the receiver from the stock for safety reasons. Then we put a sighting laser on the rail on the bridge and a bore sight laser in the bore. Now we did this so we could see the difference between point of aim, point of impact at different distances with this setup. We then repeated this whole thing with the sighting laser mounted on the low mount. For reference, the actual offsets are 3.66 high for the red dot, 2.4 inches high and 1.4 inches right for the bridge rail mount, and 1.1 inches high and 0.8 inches right for the low mount. And we'll see that here on the close target. So here's the bridge mount at just a few feet, with the high dot being the sighting laser and the low dot being the bore sighter, so your impact would be well low and left with this setup. And again at a few feet with the low mount, with your impact being about an inch low and left. This picture was shot through the red dot with the target at 7 yards. The top dot is the red dot dot, the bottom is the bore sighter. So at this range we'd hit about 2.5 inches low. With the bridge mount at 7 yards, we'd shoot 2 inches low and 1 inch to the left. And with the low mount, we'd shoot 1 inch low and a half inch to the left. At 10 yards with the red dot, we're shooting about 2 inches low. With the high mounted sight, we're shooting about 1.5 inch low and 3/4 inch to the left. And with the low mount, we're shooting about a 1 inch low and 1/2 inch to the left. "25 yards was our sight-in distance, so here all three systems will co-locate. Past 25, our point of impact is going to be above our point of aim. So it's a little hard to see at 50 yards through the red dot, but the smaller dot is our point of impact, about 4 inches high. With our high mount at 50 yards, we're 2.5 inches high and 1 inch to the right. And with the low mount at 50 yards, we're about an inch high and an inch to the right. Now as we walk out to the fence line, which is just a few yards shy of 100, shooting through the red dot became useless, but I could see that our point of impact would be about 10 inches high. And here we have the high mount, which is about 8 inches high and 2.5 inches right, and the low mount at not quite 3 inches high and 1.5 inches to the right. Now notice this low mount stayed within 3 inches all the way from right in front of the muzzle to 100 yards. Of course, lasers travel in a straight line and bullets travel in an arc, but the drop at 100 yards is just between 1 and 2 inches. So we'd see the bullet impact 1 or 2 inches closer to our point of aim at 100 yards than we're showing here. And at up closer in distances, the difference would really be negligible. So as you can see, if you intend to run a laser, having it as close to the bore as practical is a big advantage, and this mount does that very, very well. It also allows you to mount a small light close enough that it can easily be activated with the support hand without the use of a tape switch and without interfering with the charging handle. It does still allow you to run an optic, and it does all this without contacting the barrel or clamping anything to it. Now, clamping something to the barrel is probably never really the best idea, but with the PS90 it's that much more important. The PS90 barrel is actually mounted on a spring and is designed to move a little bit along its longitudinal axis. So clamping something to it has the potential to affect reliability. Now there were some concerns raised during testing. First, as I mentioned before, with my SBR, both the mount and these accessories are right in the blast path of my flash hider, and they did in fact collect some carbon. Now you all know how hard carbon can be to get off, so this might be a matter of learning to live with the aesthetic issue or spending a lot of time cleaning. However, there was no damage to the mount or to either of these accessories, and of course this wouldn't be a problem at all for those of you with 16-inch barrels. The other thing I noticed with the laser on is that it doesn't take a lot of pressure to cause a little bit of lateral motion in this mount. Now, concerned about that, I tested it by whacking it around a little bit, trying to simulate the kind of hit you might take if you racked it getting out of a car or going around a corner. And after some of that, it did in fact hold zero. Now, being as how there is a little bit of motion, it might not be the right mount if you're trying to use a laser to shoot 100-meter bullseye. But then again, if you're doing that, you may have the wrong rifle. It doesn't seem like it would be any concern at all where practical accuracy is concerned. Lastly, if you run an oversized charging handle like this one from Percival Arms, there is a potential, depending on your particular combination, of the charging handle getting in the way a little bit when you go to activate your light. Now, I can still reach up there without a problem, and it is still much easier than it would be if it were mounted up here, if the light were mounted up here on this bridge rail. But that could be an issue depending on your particular combination of light and charging handle. Of course, with this TLR3 and the standard charging handle, it's absolutely no issue. So all in all, this mount has shown itself to be practical, durable, and stable. So if you're looking for solutions to run a laser on your PS90, or you just want a mount to put a light easily within reach without the use of a tape switch, then this design machine mount accomplishes both of those things solidly and is definitely worth a look.